the point of having a snap election depends on a lot of the issues that the prime minister sometimes has control over, sometimes he doesn't have control over. But the the logic of having a snap election is it's not in the Constitution. It's just something that happens with prime ministers. The very first prime minister, Mr. Shigeru Yoshida, did a snap election when he was prime minister in his second term, um, and it worked. It worked well for him, and so throughout Japanese political history, since the new constitution was revised, there's been more snap elections than general elections. So typically, a member of the lower house will serve for 4 terms, but almost never do they serve for 4 terms. And in fact, when we went on a recess from the last diet session, the LDP members were instructed, spend time in the constituency, kiss babies, go to weddings, be with your voters, because a snap election is going to happen, and we really don't know when it's going to be, but that's the prime minister's call. So be ready for it. So, if you've been in the diet, I guess you haven't. I've been in the diet, but it's relatively quiet there. Most of the members are not in Tokyo. They're out in their constituencies, and that goes not just for the LDP but also for the others too. The one thing that the LDP has an advantage on is because the prime minister coming from the LDP, he's the president of the LDP. In fact, he can call it whenever he wants, so he can kind of a surprise attack to the opposition parties, and that's the whole purpose here, is to catch them off guard, unawares, and to be better prepared, because if you know when you're going to call it, you've got all your documents, you've got your talking points, you've got your teams already assembled, you've rented the space. And for an election cycle like for the lower house, the election period is very short. It's about 10 days, but the whole process takes around 30 days. So the prime minister would announce it. He would say in 2 weeks or in 10 days, I'm going to close, or I'm going to close down the diet right now. I'm going to call for an election. Um, so he does give a little bit of time, but it can happen relatively quickly. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. Everybody's kind of on tenterhooks, wondering when it's going to be. So the first thing that's going to happen before there is a snap election is a change of the guard in the cabinet. We were talking about that before I just got tossed off the deck of where I was earlier broadcasting. But with the new cabinet, the prime minister is hoping for wind in his sails. If you've only got a 30-day window, and actually it's a less than a 30-day window, because at the end of that period, let's say it's 30 days, you've got 10 days of an election cycle that ends at the end of the 30 days. So you've got 20 days of building up to that. The voters really don't have a whole lot of time to evaluate the policies and do an investigation of who the personalities are. So it really goes on a kind of a sense of what the press is saying. Typically, when I've been asked to describe Japanese elections, it's kind of like Matsuri. There was a Matsuri here last night. There are Matsuris going on all over Tokyo now, with lots of fireworks too. So this feeling of a celebration, of a Matsuri, that's what Japanese elections kind of are like. So people vote based on kind of a whim, depending on who they voted for the last time and what's being said in the press. Who is on first bases, on second base, and particularly what's the scandal, because the scandal really implicates what the character of that particular politician might be, or what his party represents, that sort of thing. So scandals, I think probably one of the reasons why the prime minister didn't call for a snap election earlier was not just my number, not just because of his son having a party in the prime minister's residence, but he just didn't have enough good things going on. The defense budget, the child care legislation, how we're going to pay for that sort of thing. Things just were not really going in his favor. So he's got to wait for some critical element to happen where he's got wind in his sails. People are thinking positively about the prime minister, and that's when he'll close down the diet. So I kind of don't think that the prime minister is going to wait this entire time for the end of the 4-year term of members of the parliament. I think it's going to be a snap election probably this year. Difficult to say right now.